Ms Dunn, what is your full name?
Nicole Louise Dunn.
Have you prepared a statement for the Royal Commission?
Yes, I have.
Is there a copy of your statement there in front of you on the table?
Yes, there is.
Could you just confirm by turning the pages that it is your complete statement?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Ms Dunn. Do you have any amendments to your statement?
Yes, I do. To insert after paragraph 4, I work in the emergency department of a hospital in Melbourne as a physiotherapist and care coordinator. Since the passing of my Nanna, I also work privately in aged care consulting.
Do you have any other amendments, Ms Dunn?
No, I don't.
Is this statement true and correct on the basis of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
I tender the statement of Nicole Louise Dunn, dated 19 July 2019, subject to one amendment.
Yes, the amended statement of Nicole Louise Dunn, dated the 19th of July 2019, will be Exhibit 7-11.
Ms Dunn, you became a carer for your Nanna Roma Dunn in 2015,
Yes, that's correct.
and at this time you were 32,
That's correct.
and Roma was 83.
Yes,
She was living in the Macedon Ranges.
she was, yes.
You were living in Melbourne.
Yes,
You moved in with Nanna in the Macedon Ranges in 2015.
she actually moved to Melbourne. Our family home is in Melbourne, and I moved into her Melbourne home.
You cared for her for 2.5 years until she passed away on the 6th of April 2017.
Approximately 2 years, yes.
Operator, could you please bring up the photograph at rcd.9999.0122.0002? Ms Dunn, what does this photograph show?
So this is a photograph of my Nanna and I. It was taken in January of 2017, about 3 months before she passed away. It's taken in the front yard of our family home in Melbourne, which is where I cared for her. And it's probably my favourite photograph because it wasn't until I saw this that I realised how similar we were, the family resemblance, and we have the same smile.
Operator, could you please leave the photograph on the screen while Ms Dunn gives her evidence? Ms Dunn, have you brought another symbol of your grandmother with you today?
Yes, I have.
What's that?
I've brought a bracelet of hers that's been given to me, and I always wear it if I just want extra support and for anything important. So it's important to have today.
Thank you, Ms Dunn. Ms Dunn, why did you decide to become your grandmother's carer?
I guess I never consciously made a choice to be a carer. It was more something that came about. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in April of 2015, and it seemed like the natural thing to do would be to look after her. She had a terminal diagnosis, and I knew she would decline quite quickly and need a live-in carer.
At this time, just prior to 2015, could you tell us about your grandmother and her independent life?
Yes, I guess my grandmother was what you could only describe as being fiercely independent. So she was managing 2 properties, one in semi-rural Mount Macedon in Victoria and one in Melbourne. She was doing absolutely everything for herself, she was driving her friends around. She was managing quite a large property, tending to the gardens, catching up with her friends. There was nothing she couldn't do.
Tell us about the health event that increased your Nanna's health needs.
It was very unexpected. She had 2 weeks of abnormal bowel movements, went to a doctor, went to an emergency department, and was effectively diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It was a terminal diagnosis, and she was given a prognosis of 1 year to live, and she could only have treatment, which was palliative chemotherapy. So the cancer itself and also the treatment led to her health declining.
So at about this time, how often did you visit your grandma?
Prior to her being diagnosed?
Yes.
We would kind of catch up every couple of weeks or so. We'd always have family events, and So there'd always be something on that amongst the family we would all catch up as a family, as well as with my grandmother.
Who are the other members of your family?
So my grandmother has 2 children, my father Andrew, my auntie Karen, there is myself and other grandchildren. It's quite a small family.
Ms. Dunn, what were her care needs after the diagnosis?
So initially, the care needs were more around arranging her treatment. So we were needing to decide where she would have chemotherapy because she had been living in Mount Macedon, 45 minutes out of Melbourne. So we were needing to relocate her to Melbourne, and I was needing to relocate to her home. And then we were trying to coordinate where she would have chemotherapy, who her new GP would be, trying to set up those appointments, blood tests, and then after that it was trying to work out, well, what help and support would we need. Initially, she was managing reasonably well in a physical sense after the diagnosis.
When did you move in with your Nanna?
Immediately. So she spent 2 weeks in hospital after she presented to an emergency department, and I spoke with her while she was in hospital, and I recognised with my health background she would need someone to live with her. I made the suggestion that I would like to do it, and I moved in almost immediately after she came home.
How did you assist your grandmother with navigating the aged care system?
I pretty much did it all. So I guess having a background in healthcare, I was very fortunate in that I knew the avenues of support for her. That was not something my grandmother was aware of. So I actually arranged it all for her. I completed the referrals myself, completed the paperwork myself. I spoke to all the service providers, doctors, nurses, and took her to all of the appointments.
When you first moved in with your grandmother, what did you notice about how she might have changed?
I guess the first subtle signs was that she was probably more fatigued than what she normally would have been. So this is a woman who was chopping wood on her property, the week she was diagnosed. And then I guess starting chemotherapy, you can be really quite fatigued after treatment such as that, and also with the cancer. So that was quite unusual for her, that she'd need to rest during the day, or that I might have been doing some of the other things around the house that normally she would have done without even thinking about.
So were you working full-time at the time when you moved in with your grandmother, Ms. Dunn?
Yes, I was full-time.
And how many hours of caring were you doing for your grandmother at the same time?
I would estimate between 25 to 30 hours a week. There were certainly periods of time where that certainly escalated. I guess in the beginning, where you're needing to initially establish a new healthcare support service for her and aged care, and then at times of deterioration that would also decrease.
How did you go about setting up the home?
We arranged some rails. So I arranged for an occupational therapy home visit through our GP. So we set up a care plan, and we arranged for a private occupational therapist to come to the home because we needed to get rails installed on the stairs at the front door and also in the shower.
How was this funded, Ms. Dunn?
We funded this privately.
And you mentioned that at this time you were working full-time and also caring for your grandmother up to 25 hours or more a week. What was the impact on your work?
I guess there's quite a lot of stress that can be associated with bringing a carer, and then I guess you may be coming to work not completely your fresh self. I think there can be a lot of carer fatigue, and working in healthcare I then got to be in a work situation where I keep needing to give more of myself to the patients that I also treat. So there's a lot of, I guess, fatigue in that regard. I was also being contacted a lot at work by service providers, so they tend to ring during business hours, and when I had breaks at work, they weren't really breaks because I'd be needing to call them back. Inevitably, you miss a call, you've then got to call them back. You might not get onto the person you need. you try to speak with someone else, and maybe you need to try again later in the day to reach the person who originally left a call for you.
Dunn, how did you manage the appointments such as for chemotherapy associated with your Nanna's care after she was diagnosed?
With some difficulty. It wasn't just arriving for the chemotherapy, there was some work we had to do beforehand, so we needed to get a blood test completed prior to the chemotherapy being done a couple of days beforehand to make sure she was well enough to tolerate the chemotherapy. That meant we had to have enough pathology slips from a doctor. It needed to be worked out who could get her there. I couldn't do it every single time with work, so I did have family assisting me if I couldn't take her, and my aunt in particular provided a lot of assistance. It would then be about half a day to get her into the hospital. We were taking her into a hospital in the city, and by the time you take someone into the city who might have mobility problems, or you're trying to get parking and then you're trying to get someone in, they need to be monitored before and after. It's easily half a day just for the chemotherapy itself.
What was the impact on your social life and your sport moving in with your grandmother?
I guess socially that changed quite a lot. I'm probably at an age where I guess what my friends were doing was quite different to myself, in that they had a lot of freedom and could socialise quite regularly whenever they wanted. A lot of that really stopped for me. My caring responsibility came first. That was more important. I couldn't really see it any other way. So really my dedication was in looking after my Nanna, not so much socialising with my friends. It was something that I wanted to do but also needed to do.
Once you moved in with your grandmother, how did you manage the increased workload?
I guess there came a point where I knew something was going to give and a change had to be made. It was something that I spoke with my boss about early on, and the conversation I had with him was that I really needed to reduce work because I couldn't be a full-time carer, which is what it was turning into, and also work full-time. So work had to reduce. I reduced to 4 days a week.
What supports were available for you during this time?
I did access some supports through my workplace, through the Employee Assistance Program, to get some counselling, because it was a very unexpected and shocking diagnosis. It was not something that we could foresee, and I found the diagnosis quite difficult to deal with. So having some counselling around that was particularly helpful. I did try to access some financial assistance through Centrelink. I applied for a carer supplement, but that was declined.
What did the assessment for the carer supplement involve?
It involved asking almost like a tick box style of questions. Can she walk on her own, or does she need assistance? Can she shower and dress on her own, or does she need assistance? What other activities of daily living could she do on her own or needing assistance? It asked a bit about her memory. It asked a little bit about if there were any behavioural issues like agitation and things like that.
Did it include her prognosis?
I believe it was written in the document, or the family doctor put some evidence of that in the document, but I don't believe it was considered.
What's your view about the assessment process, having gone through this with your grandmother?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the difficulty that we experienced is she's a lady who wants to do what she can for herself. She wants to be independent. She doesn't want to be dependent on someone. So she was trying to do all she could initially, and the assistance initially that was needed, which was when I made the application in a physical sense, wasn't too much. It was more the coordination. But she rapidly deteriorated. And within a year of applying for a carer supplement, she was in an aged care facility requiring 24-hour care. And I don't think that was taken into account.
By this time, had you been living with your Nanna for 2 years?
I had been living with her since her diagnosis in April of 2015. I'd been living with her for maybe 3 or 4 months prior to making the application. I had lived with her previously in my younger years for periods of time.
How long did you live with your Nanna for before she moved into the aged care facility?
I cared for her at home for 18 months, so she outlived her prognosis, we were blessed.
What was the impact on your life choices during these 18 months?
I don't know whether I really considered my life choices, to be honest. I would say I didn't consider them because that was not what was important to me. What was important to me was providing care for someone else, particularly because I knew the time I had to do that would be limited. So I didn't consider my own life choices, so it meant that if my social life was to be impacted, so be it. If work was impacted, so be it. Even if my own health was impacted, so be it.
During this 18-month period when you were living with your Nanna, how did you get a break?
Family was a really big support to me. I was very fortunate in that all of my family were very supportive, and all of them tried to help out when they can and when they could. Like myself, they were also all working full time. I did seek some in-home respite and some support through Carers Victoria, which was wonderful and of great assistance.
How many hours respite did you get a fortnight during that period?
Through Carers Victoria, we qualified for 4 hours a fortnight, and we paid privately to supplement that just so I could have a little bit more of a break, because I guess 4 hours is half a day. By the time you get someone who's quite fatigued or not in good health ready, they might go out. By the time they come back, it's not 4 hours. Is probably not 4 hours.
Ms. Dunn, how did you find information about supports that were available to carers?
I was very fortunate because I have a background in healthcare. That was something that, from a professional sense, I was already aware of. So I was very lucky. I don't know where I would have started otherwise. I really don't.
How did you find out about the treatments that your grandmother would be receiving?
So that was something that probably was quite foreign to me. My background is not in oncology. My understanding of chemotherapy and palliative care would be that of anyone else, really. And we found out about that from the medical professionals, so from the family doctor and also from her oncologist that she was referred to.
What supports would have been helpful for you at this time, Ms. Dunn?
I guess perhaps being offered some pre-counselling around chemotherapy, around palliative care, before those services are needed, would have been really helpful. I think just if you can have some idea of what might happen or what might you expect and how that might impact you, that would have made it so much easier. It's really shocking when a doctor says to you, we think we should get the palliative team to come and speak to your Nanna at home. And that was really the first I'd ever had any contact with that on a personal level, and I think some pre-counselling would have been helpful.
How did you feel moving in with your grandmother and caring for her?
It was probably a bit mixed. On one hand, we've always just been so close and always got along so well, so it was great to be living with her again. But on the other hand, there was another reason for doing that. It wasn't planned, it wasn't something by choice, and I was moving in with her because she had a terminal diagnosis, and that was incredibly devastating.
How did you feel then when she moved into the aged care facility after you'd been living with her for 18 months?
I think that was probably another point in time in which I grieved. I probably grieved as much at that point in time as when she passed away. I was just so used to having her there every day. I was so used to doing everything for her. And then it was just so quiet.
What are your favourite memories about when you lived with your Nanna?
Her cheekiness. You wouldn't think a woman of 83 could be so cheeky, but I tell you what, she can. She just, wonderful positive outlook on life. Just so giving, so loving, yeah. Full of fun.
Ms. Dunn, you're one of our you are our youngest carer witness in this hearing in Mildura.
Yes.
Is there a normal carer in your view?
No. I was quite shocked to hear that I would be the youngest person speaking. I couldn't understand that. I know other people my age who are carers, and I really couldn't understand that at all. It's been a comment that has been said to me before, oh, but you're not a normal carer, or you're not a typical carer, and I couldn't understand what people meant by that. Am I meant to be caring for a parent rather than a grandparent, or am I meant to be older, or is this meant to be a planned thing that will just conveniently fit into my life, or am I meant to be someone that's retired or already working as a stay-at-home mum, so I'm already in that role? I just couldn't understand it at all.
How did you recover after your role as a carer ended when your grandmother passed away?
I guess it took a while to recover. There was obviously a natural grieving process that you go through, and it's another point in time in which you're just constantly adjusting again, and you somehow have to just get back to the normality of life as if nothing happened. So it was difficult. It was emotionally quite difficult to do.
Did you resume at 5 days a week in your work?
No, I continued at 4 days a week. I just felt that would be best for me in terms of where I was at with things.
You mentioned that your respite was fairly limited, with family members assisting from time to time during this period. How did you manage that?
Could you repeat the question?
How did you manage having limited access to respite?
We had to pay for it, was the answer. There wasn't going to be more avenues, and if we wanted more help, we had to pay for it. And paying for it in the private sector is quite expensive. It's around about $55 an hour. Anyone on a pension will not have the means to afford that.
How did you find the services that were available to you?
The services were wonderful. The quality of care that we received in home was fantastic. In particular, the respite and the care that we had that provided that was just so dedicated. And she was really about not just giving myself a break, but giving my grandmother quality of life. So doing the things that she enjoyed doing, keeping her active. I have no doubt those kinds of things prolonged her life beyond what it should have been.
How did you find the information services that were available to you?
Difficult. So I guess one example, I was aware as a healthcare professional that I could access support through a carer support service, and even with that I sort of got the runaround a bit on the phone because I called up Carers Victoria and they said, oh, we're the statewide service, and I thought, oh, okay, well I obviously should be ringing some other service, and then I did phone another service, and then they said, oh yes, they are the statewide service, but they also support carers in the western region of Melbourne, which was where we lived. So I think you can still have difficulty with the system, even if you have knowledge of the system, and it doesn't take away the fact that you need to constantly advocate for someone and for the help that they need. I applied for a personal alarm. Again, I was denied for that. So the personal alarm, the safety alarm, which my grandmother would wear as a button around her neck, so if she fell, which she did have falls while I was at work, she could at least seek emergency help. And And again, I was told I wasn't eligible because I lived with her, even though I was working.
What information would have been useful for you at this time?
I think the main thing that I really wanted was someone to talk to, so some support as a carer. That was something that I was able to access through Carers Victoria eventually, but there was a wait time. We waited about 2 to 3 months to get that. And it might not seem long, but when someone has a very terminal diagnosis, that waiting time is suddenly magnified. So I think really that early intervention would have been really helpful as a carer to know what to expect in the health sense of chemotherapy and treatment, and also that counselling side of it.
How did you get information in the absence of support?
Google. So I was researching quite a lot on the internet. I spent 2 hours one day researching day centres. So if my grandmother wished to go to a day centre, I would know exactly which one would be the best one for her in our area. So it was lots of online research.
You mentioned, Ms. Dunn, that you have chosen to continue working 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about how you spend your time now, split between your various employment plans.
So at the moment, I guess I've returned to catching up with friends. I continue to play sport. So I'm playing netball and was playing football again as well, AFL. So these are really the things that are important to me, and I find it really important now to give back as a carer, given I've been through this journey and have come out on the other side of it.
And how's your work going now, Ms. Dunn?
It's busy, as emergency departments are, but work is going really good, and it's nice to feel comfortable working back in that space again.
What benefits came from being a carer?
There were a lot of benefits that I got. It really brought my grandmother and I closer together in terms of our relationship, just the silly little things you do day to day that you get to see and you get to experience in caring for someone, and that's something I look back and I treasure. I'm really proud of being a carer for her, and it's given me a different outlook on life. So I really appreciate the little things in life, and I'm very lucky that at my age I can really realise what's truly important, and it's not the materialistic things, it's the time that you have with people.
How's your experience as a carer affected your choices about your work?
I guess after my grandmother passed away, I did make a choice that I would also like to do my own consulting work. I've dedicated that work to her because I want to work with other carers, and I want to create options out there for people to find a way through the system when they can't with what's already available.
And how do you find that work that you've chosen to do?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I feel that I'm absolutely a better clinician from being a carer. I can just relate to people on a completely different level and see what they're going through and where they're at. And that brings me back to when I was a carer, and I think back to the things that I went through. So the ability to relate to other carers has just been wonderful.
Ms. Dunn, that comes to the conclusion of my examination. Is there anything that you wanted to share with the commissioners about your experiences as a carer?
Yeah. I guess I find the aged care system to be very reactive in a sense. We wait for someone to be unwell, we wait for someone to end up in a hospital and then someone comes along and says, have you thought about aged care and what help is out there? And I just feel it really needs to be flipped on its head. The one constant in everything is that we are all ageing. So if we know we are all ageing, why aren't we having these discussions about aged care and how the system works before people need it? I think we need to be more proactive in the way we respond to aged care.
Should the focus be on both the carer and the aged care recipient?
Absolutely. I think if the recipients were more informed of how aged care services worked and what is available prior to needing them, it would take a lot of the carer burden off, because from my experience I spent so much time speaking to services and arranging the services, and that was because my grandmother was not aware of how to do that or what was available.
Thank you, Ms Dunn. That concludes my examination, Commissioners.
Thank you. Ms Dunn, can I take you away from caring for a minute? Did I rightly understand that you have also got experience in the aged care sector as a physiotherapist?
Yes, I've worked in the aged care sector as a physiotherapist and also a care coordinator. That entails myself sorting out social problems for people, both predominantly recently in the emergency department setting.
So that's within hospitals, not in aged care residential facilities?
Not in aged care residential facilities, no. It's been more home-based outreach support, so supporting older people at home or in an emergency department.
Yes. And could you tell us how that linkage is forged? Do I take it that an aged person presents at an emergency department with perhaps a broken limb or something of that kind, and after discharge there needs to be follow-up, and that's organised through the hospital?
Yes, very much so. So the common presentations would be a fall resulting in an injury or a fracture, and then there is a need for help that perhaps wasn't there, and an individual needs assistance to arrange such help. Where I also see more and more presentations where people have just gradually declined at home, where there hasn't been an incident, and someone has continued to decline at home to the point of needing to come into an emergency department, which could have been avoided purely because they've not known how to get help or that's not been offered.
And your home visits are sponsored by the health service, not as part of an aged care package?
Part of the hospital. It's hospital funded.
Yes. And is that a common practice in major hospitals to have this outreach service?
In metropolitan hospitals it is. It's predominantly an emergency department based service. The hospital I work for has a continuing link to the community. In other hospitals they may run as separate services, the emergency and community support.
And I take it that the alternative to you looking after somebody at home following an accident would be that they would have to be in either still in hospital or in a rehabilitation facility.
Correct. Or sometimes emergency respite or an aged care facility is arranged, yes.
And in your experience, do people prefer to be looked after at home rather than at one of these other types of facility?
Yeah, across the board, older people want to be at home. They don't want to be somewhere else. They want to be where it's familiar to them and they're comfortable.
Yeah, it's just a short question that follows on from your witness statement, Ms. Dunn. And you talk there about the problems with having to go through the same information with assessment services and so on time and time again. And we've heard that in other evidence before this Royal Commission. My question is a general one, and I'm not sure I can put it properly, but I'll have a go. If there were a universal tick box that said, I'm the carer for this person, I have authority to take decisions with for this person, and that was to be shared around both the government and the supportive care services, do you think that would be attractive to people, or would that be an infringement of their privacy?
I can only speak for myself, but that would have been wonderful to have had. It would have saved a lot of duplication. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nothing arising. Thank you, Commissioners. If this witness may please be excused.
Ms. Dunn, thank you very much for your evidence. As was mentioned during your evidence, you are indeed the youngest carer that we have encountered, and your selfless care for your grandmother is a wonderful testimony to you and the support system that you have within your family. Thank you very much for sharing it all with us.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill.